Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon for our sort of live demo of Sage Intacct. I just want to provide a very quick overview. It's a handful of slides, no more than that, and then I'm going to hand you across to my colleague Hamza. Really, the idea is just to kind of introduce who we are, really what gives us the right to talk about Sage Intacct, a high-level introduction to the system, and then, as I say, I want to get you over to my colleague Hamza. In terms of intros, my name's Rory. I'm a sales consultant here with Vision 33. And with me today is Hamza, who is our delivery manager, sort of looks after our team of consultants, ensuring that, they all run smoothly. Now, Hamza himself is actually a certified Intacct consultant, so has led implementations. Aside from this, he's also a qualified accountant and actually has worked on your side of the fence as part of the finance team and has actually implemented Sage Intacct as part of a project. So really knowledgeable and in really good hands today with Hamza. An introduction as to who we are. So we are Vision 33. We are a Sage business partner and we resell Sage Intacct, which is their flagship financial management system. Don't worry if you've never heard of Sage Intacct. I'll be quite honest, they do a horrible job of actually marketing it, but it is a very strong and capable system, which you're going to see in the demo. We are a reseller, as I said, an added value partner. What that means for you is that if you came to us for Sage Intacct, we actually have the rights to sell the system, but then your implementation and ongoing support would be all done through us. So it's one partner. You don't have to jump between multiple partners to implement support and sell you the software. It's all done through ourselves. We are what we refer to sort of is a finance transformation. So it's something that we do day in, day out in terms of, implementing finance and ERP solutions. And it's very much a journey and a partnership with ourselves at Vision 33. And just to make that very clear, what separates us from other organizations and perhaps other Intacct partners is that we don't have a separate support and implementation team, whereby once you finish the implementation, you're sort of thrown over the fence to someone in support. We have what we refer to as a center of excellence. Our central delivery team for Sage Intacct also provides the ongoing support for you. And in most cases, when you go to raise a support ticket, the team do their best to ensure that ticket finds its way back to the consultant that worked with you on the project. And it just sort of allows that continuity and relationships. But I mean, we've worked with all different types of sort of customers. It's not a brag, please, by any means, because we've got different types of organizations joining us today. I know we've got some, not-for-profits, events-based companies, general business. We work in a multitude of different sectors. And again, Hamza and the team have sort of worked on these implementations. I think the nice thing, though, is that it's a consultative experience for you. So even though you might be a particular type of organization, the team will actually sort of lean in with their own kind of experience where they've seen things work well elsewhere. Really, the idea is that you get a system that is, not only bespoke to yourselves as a company, but is also tailored to your requirements, particularly in the type of business that you are. Now, Sage Intacct, you may have heard of it. This might be brand new for you, but it is a best of breed finance solution. I like to make a clear distinction that it's not an ERP like NetSuite or Business Central or Dynamics, where you get, a core financials module and inventory and maybe some other bits and pieces that you don't need. It's very much a core financial system, but with very strong modules that you can add on if they're required, such as, inventory, multi-currency, multi-entity. I think the key takeaway there is two key takeaways is that it is a native cloud system. What that means is that it actually started its life as a cloud-based solution back in 1999. It's not one of these finance products that has recently made the jump to cloud, but you still have to access it through Citrix or some sort of, remote desktop, or in worst case scenarios, you still, you have two different versions of the solution. Providing you have a web browser and internet connection, you can access sort of Sage Intacct really anywhere. Now, it's also a dimensional accounting solution. Again, Hamza's going to walk us through what those mean. Dimensions might be something that you're aware of or use already, but the idea is that dimensions is kind of the backbone of Sage Intacct, particularly where sort of reporting is concerned. Now, what we're going to do is, as part of today's demo, is kind of walk through most of the core financials that every organization gets with Sage Intacct, but there are some additional sort of enhancements, if you will, that we will run through, multi-entity and global consolidations being one. But as I say, all of these additional modules you can add on when they become necessary. So Intacct is very much a modular system in that sense. So, part of my role is to ensure that you have what you need day one, and then you're ongoing account management with your customer success manager is to identify what it is that Intact can do further for you as your organization and business grows. The other key thing with Intact is it's micro verticalized. What we mean by that is that when we go to provision your Sage Intacct environment, we will do so on the type of organization that you are. So things like your statutory compliance around reporting, terminology will already kind of be pre-built in the system for you. And of course, working with Hamza, Hamza and his team, sorry, you then tailor the system accordingly to yourselves and as a finance team and also as an organization. But the key thing here is that time to value is a lot faster. So a typical Intact implementation is 3 months as opposed to 6 or 9 months that you might find with, again, something like NetSuite or Dynamics. So it is an off-the-shelf system to an extent, but then you do also have that ability to, as I say, customize it within the implementation project. Now, Intact, although it's very much driven as a multi-entity, multi-currency sort of organization, if you're with us today and you are only a single entity, please do not be alarmed. Intact is catered to tailor for every type of business. So whether you are just a single entity with perhaps, ambition to grow, whether here in the UK or internationally, Intact will be there to see that to sort of fruition. But if you are a multi-entity organization, again, either here in the UK or internationally, again, Intact can provide a lot for you in terms of, a consolidation, global consolidations, multi-book accounting, multi-currency. Again, it's just trying to understand where you are at the moment and where it is that you need to be. And then Intact is effectively tailored accordingly to your size of organization. And then lastly, Saltbox is our own integration platform. Why I've thrown that up as a slide is that it's very common for us to get integration requirements with new customers. You might have other systems in play at the moment that you want to be fed into your finance system or even vice versa. Really, the idea of Saltbox is if you don't have the internal resources, so developers or the know-how to use APIs or whatever it might be, we can actually plug Saltbox in between Intact and your other systems and ensure that, data is flowing. What we're trying to achieve and what we do achieve is move away from what we refer to as data silos and you guys in the finance team having to kind of pull data out into Excel, remap, reformat, and then push that manually into a new system, and again the other way around. So that does tend to take a lot of time. So that's it. As I said, I wanted to keep that short and sweet. I'm going to hand over to Hamza. I'm going to stop talking and let Hamza take the lead.
Awesome. Thanks, Rory. Brilliant. So as Rory mentioned, I'm going to be taking you guys through a little bit of a demo on Sage Intacct this afternoon. So hopefully you guys can see my Sage Intacct window here. Now, this is my demo environment called Hamza Stationery Shop. It is a company that trades across the globe there. So if we look at our entity selector, we can see that we've got entities all across the world, including the UK, the US, Canada, etc. And I'm going to start us off on this page here called a dashboard. Now, dashboards are one of the biggest and most powerful elements of Sage Intacct. And what they seek to do is essentially introduce a whole new way of reporting in Sage Intacct in a much more consolidated and easy to read fashion. And what it means is the key people in your company, like CFOs and CEOs and things like that, can get the information they need a lot quicker and a lot easier rather than having to dig through the system and look for that information. So this dashboard that I've got set up here is what I like to call a CFO global view dashboard. And what it shows is essentially a consolidated view of all of my different entities across the globe there, like we just discussed, in the same currency. So the currency I've chosen here is dollars, but equally it could be in any currency in the world, UK GBP, a South African rand, anything you guys want there. Okey-doke. And straight across the top there, I've got a little graph that shows me my company performance. Again, all consolidated, so we can see our revenue, total costs, and net income. Everything you see on this dashboard is, of course, drillable as well, and that applies across all dashboards. So, for example, if you wanted to drill into this element on the revenue line, you could click onto it, and that would pull out the report that makes up that number. So I'll pop it over here. It's just popped out into a separate page. Here we go. So we can see it's a $2.9 million figure. And this is everything that goes into it. And similarly, I could drill further into this and keep drilling through until I get down to the originating transactions that make up those numbers. So it's super easy to drill through and find out where these numbers are essentially coming from and where they're made up from in the system. Okie dokie. Now on this dashboard, I've got loads of different key data points, like my total revenue, my labor costs, operating expenses, And then further down, I've also got graphs and data split out by different dimensions that I've got in Sage Intacct. Now, you might be familiar with dimensions, you might not be, but Intacct seeks to introduce dimensions into your finance system as sort of reporting categories or cost centers, if you will. So as an example, over here, we've got a revenue by location graph. And what this shows me is my revenue, but this time it's actually split that revenue up by the different locations I've got in the system. And that makes it really easy to see what the revenue is in each location quite simply. All right. Over here on the right hand side, very similar concept, but this time I've done it within the entities and by departments. So we can see we've got operating expense by department, and I've got various different departments in this company. And within each of those departments, I can see what the operating expense is. So if I clicked into admin here, it would pull that piece of the pie chart out and it would show me the report that makes up that figure. So we can pop it over here. So you can see that this is everything that went into the admin department for that period. And again, I could drill further into this to find out or do some inquiries on what's going on. So if I looked at the rent and thought, oh, that looks a bit higher than usual, I could click into that and that would drill in and show me where that figure is actually coming from. Okie dokie. And that's essentially what dimensions are there to do, is allow you to categorize your transactions into different elements and different little categories or buckets, if you will, in order to actually show where that transactional information is going. So whether it's an expense or a revenue, you can categorize it and then later on report by those different categories. We're going to jump into that a little bit more shortly, but we'll fire through the rest of this dashboard. So I've got various other things like my EBITDA, net income, etc., etc. And again, this dashboard is just a really good example of how you could utilize the different chart types and report types in the system to get everything you need on the same page. These dashboards are live. So if anyone does a transaction in the back end, the dashboard will immediately update. So it's really good if you are, again, like I say, a CFO or a CEO, and you're wanting to find information quite quickly. You can utilize these dashboards to do so. And it doesn't just it's not restricted to CFOs and CEOs. You can use this for a little bit more granular information as well. So as an example, I've got another dashboard here, which is specifically for accounts receivable clerks. Alrighty. Now on this one, it's everything to do with AR. And we can see our AR balance, our intercompany receivable balance, our disputed amounts. We've got things like our trade detail and also invoices that are going into the system. And I've also got a little pie chart that shows me my customer agent report as well. Over here on the left, we've got some customer navigation bits. So we could actually use this page as a pivot point to do our daily activities. So if I wanted to raise an invoice, I could just press create a sales invoice, and that would take me straight over to the page to create a sales invoice. It's popping out into a separate screen because I'm only sharing one, but albeit you could do it from that. Okie doke. So another really, really good way you could use those dashboards, and it doesn't stop there. You can create as many different dashboards as you sort of wish. So you can see here, I've got loads of different dashboards going on in the system. But just on that topic of dimensions, let's drill into that a little bit more. Now, like I mentioned, what Sage Intacct looks to do is introduce this concept of cross-company dimensions in there for you. Okie doke. Now, the key bit is that they are all defined by you in your company. So as Rory mentioned earlier in his presentation, Intacct can be set up for various different verticals. Similarly, because the system is so bespoke and because it's so customizable, we can set up all the different dimensions in the system to work for your company. So if you're an NFP, for example, you can use the funds one, and you can set up restricted funds and unrestricted funds, etc., and grants and things like that. If you're a service industry company, you can use departments or any of the other dimensions that you get, and you can set those up exactly how you want. And as part of your implementation process, we take you through setting these different dimensions up and using them in the system. So in this environment, I've got sales, services, admin, marketing, and IT, and I've got a couple of others there as well as an example. But again, you can use these however you want. How that sort of translates to an actual transaction itself is if we jump down into the UK entity here and we head over to AR and AR sales invoices. Awesome. So this is a sales invoice entry screen. I'm going to just select customer. Let's go with Hamza Stationery Shop. And I'm not going to pop in anything else. We will gloss over that. We'll go with due on receipt. And of course, you can add an attachment if you like. You can drag and drop it onto the screen, or you can select it from the drop down. It's up to you. And you can also transact in any currency in the world. So If you wanted to transact in USD, you can easily do that there. And you can see that the system will calculate the transactional rate for you. So if it was $100 in this case, it shows you the base amount would be £73.94. And it uses something called the Intacct daily rate, which is a live rate pulled from Oanda.com. If you didn't want to use that rate, that's fine. You can use your own rates as well. You can use custom rates. It's up to you. We'll keep it simple. We'll go with GBP for today. Then it's just a case of selecting your normal GL code as you usually would. So let's go with our revenue code. I'm going to do £100. And this is where we look at the departments and dimensions, right? So here we've got all of our different dimensions available. And traditionally, you would just code this transaction to a nominal code, put your amount in, put your taxes in, and then post it. But what you can do with Intacct now is you can actually categorize this transaction into a certain dimension or a certain department or a certain fund or a certain project. And later on, we can report on that. So if I was to say, right, this is £100 revenue, but I wanted to go into the services department, I could select that. And I could also select that it applies against a certain project. So we could say, right, it applies against contingency planning. So we could select that as well. If there's default setup, it will just populate them in like it did for me, but we can just pop those out there. Alrighty, so yeah, you can essentially just categorize your transaction into a different category. And once it's all in there, then when you go ahead and post this, it'll post that transaction into that GL code, but it will also categorize it by that services department, meaning when we actually run a report, so if we head over to the report center, instead of running a traditional P&L, which just shows you all your GL codes down the left and then a whole bunch of figures across the columns, you can actually now run P&Ls by the different dimensions you've got in the system. So for example, I could run a profit and loss by department now. And if I press OK, what it will show me is my P&L down the left as it normally would. This one's in summary format, but it doesn't matter. And across the top, I can actually see this categorized out by my different departments that I've got in the system, which is a lot more valuable information than just getting a column with all your figures, because straight away you can see how each department is doing. And it doesn't just stop at departments. So that's just one of your dimensions. You get loads of dimensions in the system. So you've got customers that act as a dimension, suppliers, class, item, project. Class is an empty dimension for you to repurpose however you like. And you can utilize those dimensions there to get really, really granular reporting over just the standard P&L detail, which I can show you here. Awesome. So here would just be a standard P&L, and we can see we've got prior year, then we've got some actual data, then a budget column, actual minus budget and budget variance. So again, just a good example of what a standard P&L would look like, but you could expand this out to actually incorporate different departments too. So we could actually get budget by department, actual minus budget by department, prior year by department, and so on and so on. And it doesn't stop there. These reports are real easy to chop and change as well if you want to. So if we jump up to the top level here, with the system, you get 2 financial report writers as well as a full report center. So you get a whole bunch of reports straight out of the box there alongside your Sage Intacct subscription. And you get a lot of these reports that you guys can see on the screen. You'll get a lot of these included. But if you want to build your own, you have a financial report writer and also a custom report writer in there as well, which again, you'll be given full training on how to use as well. But chopping and changing reports is literally very easy. So for example, if I was to take, let's just grab this profit and loss detail as an example, and we click edit, it brings you into the report writer. And over on the columns tab, we can see how this report is constructed. So in the first column, we've got actual for prior year, then we've got actual for current year, and we've got budget for current year, we've got actual minus budget for current year, and we've got budget variance for current year. Super simple. If you wanted to add another column on the right, it's literally just a case of add column right. And you can just select what this column needs to be, actual or budget or forecast or anything like that. So I could say, right, I want this to be the remaining budget. And I want it to be the remaining budget of the same budget I've been using over here. And I want it to be current year as well. So we could select that, save and done. And that's your report done and edited. And now when you run this report, so if we jump back over here and run it, you'll have that additional column added on to the end, just there, remaining budget. So we can actually see very easily how much is actually left of our budget. So just in that fashion, a couple of clicks, and I've edited that report to give me a very valuable column, which you would otherwise have to calculate in Excel, which I'm sure you'll appreciate isn't the best way to do things anymore. So Intacct makes life really easy with really, really advanced financial reporting in there as well. Not to mention that capability of dimensions where you can actually really categorize your transactions down. Okie dokie. Now, those reports don't stop there. If you wanted to, once you've got your reports built up and you've got them all set up in the system ready to go, what you can actually do is set these reports to schedule and just deliver to people on their own. So, for example, on this profit and loss detail, I can edit the schedule and say, right, every month, starting at the end of this month, I want you to, every month one, I want you to email this report. I want you to run it and email it out to so on and so on person. This is the subject, and I want you to send it in Excel format. And I want the message to be, hey, see attached this month's P and L. All right. And it doesn't have to be the entire company's P&L. You can actually filter this to just show a specific area of the company or a specific department. So if you want the sales team to get their P&L, you could set up the sales schedule and save that. Then you could set up another schedule for the services team and another schedule for the admin team and so on and so on. And in that fashion, you've got the system doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So month-end reporting becomes really, really simple and easy. If you don't like email and you'd rather store this in your SharePoint, you can do that as well. So you can say, right, store it in a cloud location, and I want you to send it to so-and-so SharePoint, and this is the path that I want you to send it in Excel format. And it'll just go ahead and store that in your Google Drive or your Microsoft 365, wherever you want. Okie doke. So real nice and simple to set up, and it gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of time saving already. Cool stuff. So moving on from there, we're staying in the United Kingdom entity for this. Another feature I like to demo is over on accounts receivable as well. Now, we've already seen what an AR sales invoice entry looks like. So I'm just going to fly through this bit and set another one up again. Now, one thing a lot of companies do is revenue recognition. So essentially what will happen is they'll get some revenue in, but they don't want to recognize that revenue immediately. They want to defer it, and they want to release and amortize that revenue over the course of 12 months, as an example, right? So what you can do with Intacct, or traditionally what you would do, is set that up in potentially Excel and then manually journal every month. Now, of course, as you can probably agree, that's really risky. You might forget, you might miss one. You have to keep a track of that manually. If that Excel file goes missing, then you're pretty cooked. So what you can do in Intacct is you can get something called the revenue management module, and that allows you to manage all of your RevRec schedules within Intacct. So I'm going to set up my invoice as normal. Revenue and my transactional I'm going to do for 1,000. I'm going to say, right, I want you to defer this for 12 months and recognize it straight line starting from, let's say, the 31st, and it'll work out the end date for me. And then I can go ahead and post this. And we'll go ahead and post that invoice in. And then what we'll do is if we jump back into it, you can see that we should now have, if we jump back into the line, we now have a schedule. So if I click on this schedule, we'll be able to see that the system has taken that £1,000, it's deferred it immediately into the deferred account, and it's created 12 equal postings for 83.33 each. Oh, these top few are 83.34, and it's going to post into deferred revenue and then into my revenue on these dates for the next 12 months. Okay, doke. And it's going to do that for me automatically. You can see they're still all in open state, but once they've been posted, that would change to posted. Okay, doke. And it's going to do that all automatically, like I say. So once this is set up, you can forget about it forever. You don't need to worry about it again. If for whatever reason you need to chop and change this, you can click hold, terminate, edit the schedule if you need to. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You can set it up and leave it, and you can forget about it, and the system will manage all of your revenue schedules for you, which again, if you do this at the moment, that's probably life-changing stuff. You can do the same on the expense side. So you can get something called prepaid expense amortization, which does exactly the same thing, but on the expenses side. Okay, doke. So those two modules there can be utilized and scoped in, and they give you a lot of flexibility. And again, a lot of heavy lifting there is taken off you for the system to do. Great stuff, and it's super basic stuff, and it's nice to be able to do that in the system. Okie dokie. Now, flip side of that coin is purchasing. Now, of course, we do have the accounts payable module, which would be the mirror image of what you guys have just seen. But I'm going to show you instead a purchase order system. because a lot of people look for these, a lot of clients want these, and Intacct has a really, really good one set up in there. So again, sticking with the theme of being super customizable, my Intacct environment here has a lot of workflow set up. So do bear with me when I show you this, but I'll run you through it. Now, again, like I say, system's customizable. So as part of your implementation with us at Vision, we'll take you through and go through how you guys want to set this up in your company, meaning we'll go through what the workflow looks like. So if you want it to go from requisition to order to goods received to invoice, we can do that. If you prefer a much more complicated workflow with inventory in it or receiving items or blanket POs, things like that, we can do that too. Similarly, if you want approvals in there, so which level you want approvals at and how many layers of approval you'd like. Again, that's all stuff we go through with you and we can set up absolutely fine. Okie doke. And I'm going to show you that as an example here too. So the workflow I'm going to use is I'm going to start from requisition. Then I'm going to go down to purchase order, then to a fulfillment, and then to a supplier invoice. Okie doke. And we're going to look at some approvals along the road as well. Now, putting that into practice, over here, we're going to start with requisition, and there's one here that I set up earlier. So what I did was I went into requisitions and created a new requisition. Now the entry screens look all very similar, which is nice. Keep some consistency. And I've got an attachment on there as well, which I could click on this paper clip and it would show me what the attachment is. And this was for a new laptop that I wanted. So I selected my item and my department and the quantity it was and how much it was at the time of me doing the requisition. And I went ahead and submitted that. Now I had some approval set up in the system. So here we can see that my requisition went off for an approval. And the first level of approval was to a user, and the user was Emma. She approved it. And then straight after that, it hit my second layer of approval, which was a value approval because it's over a certain amount. And then it was approved by my value approver. In this situation, I approved both of them, of course. But in real life, you would get email notifications. The approvers would get emails to approve those. And they can go into the system and approve those, at which point they can be moved to the next step in the workflow. Awesome. Then I moved my requisition to a purchase order, ready to place the order. So we can see there it is there. Now what the system does, again, to keep it nice and easy for you, is it copies everything over from the requisition, again, saving time and human error, including the attachments. And you can see there's a link as well. So it says converted from purchase requisition. Okie doke. Copies everything over straight from the system. Once I'm ready, I can go ahead and print this or email this. And I can email this directly out to the supplier for them to fulfill this order. Okie doke. Once the order is fulfilled, I converted that order to a fulfillment. We're going to gloss over that because it's the same thing. And then from the fulfillment, I converted it to a supplier invoice. So we can see our supplier invoice is there. The only thing different on an invoice then is the rest of the documents is the fact that this one has some tax on it. So I've got all my details in. Again, you can see it's converted from purchase order, which is great. So there's always like a three-way match. And I added my tax and posted this. And at that point, the invoice is ready to pay and settle with the supplier. Okie doke. So that is an end-to-end process of a purchase order system. Again, we can make that as comprehensive or as complicated as you wish. It's completely up to you how you want that to look and work. But yeah, the flexibility gives us a lot of room for maneuver with the PO system. Okie dokie. Brilliant. So pivoting from there back up to the top level, another really good module that I like to demo is the consolidation module. Now, you can get this in two versions, domestic consolidations and global consolidations. One's for multi-currency, one's for domestic currency. I have the global one set up here, and within this, you can set up as many different books as you'd like. So I've got a book set up here, which is called Global GBP. And in this consolidation book, I have said I want you to consolidate all of my entities into the same currency. For my balance sheet accounts, I want you to translate them using the ending spot rate and the weighted average rate, and any currency exchange gain or loss gets posted into these nominal codes here. The entities I'm consolidating are all of these, and perhaps one of the best features of the system is this here, the enable inter-entity auto-elimination. If you are currently doing consolidations, again, you'll know how heavy that is, how amazing of a feature it is to have inter-entity auto-elimination, because if you're doing that in Excel, I can only pray for you, to be honest, if you're doing it in Excel. But yeah, inter-entity auto elimination, inter-entity transactions are a headache. So be the system knowing which ones are inter-entity and eliminating them for us into these relevant accounts here that you can see, my due to and due from accounts, is life-changing stuff. And that all happens automatically on point of consolidation. So doing a consolidation is super easy. You can automate this as well, so the system can just do this for you. But traditionally, if you wanted to do it, you just head over to this screen, select your consolidation book, select the month you want to consolidate, hit consolidate, hit OK, and that's a consolidation running. Okie dokie. So it goes into process. Once it's done, it'll go green. We don't need to wait for it because I'm not running reports on that period. But once that's done, you can go ahead and run any report in the system you want at a consolidated level. So we can jump over to the report center and we'll randomly pick a report. Let's go with, let's try that one, profit and loss. In fact, that's a UK one. Let's try this profit and loss summary. Okay. And what you can do just literally on the fly is change the reporting method to whichever consolidation book or the accrual book that you want to see. So if I wanted to run a report on my global location book, I could do so. I could press that, press OK. And what I'm seeing here now is a P&L in the currency I've consolidated into, month ending, quarter ending, and then year ending as well at a consolidated level. Now that is incredibly powerful stuff, and all intensity transactions have been eliminated as well. Again, you can drill into this and get more information if you needed to, but real nice and easy stuff. And it's really quick to get that consolidated reporting out at a group level. Okie dokie. Awesome. Moving on to the final thing I want to show you guys today is cash management. Now, Sage Intacct has the capability of connecting to any bank in the world via a bank feed. So it doesn't matter which bank it is, you can absolutely check with Rory or myself, but we can connect with any bank. And what we can do with that is essentially speed up your bank reconciliation. So I don't have a feed connected here because it's a demo system, but I do have a dummy feed connected. So we'll jump into our rec. This is our bank rec screen. Again, super straightforward to look at. And I'm sure you guys have done a bank rec before if you're looking at Sage Intacct. But it's very simple. So on our Intacct side, you get all your Interact transactions. And then if you've got a feed connected, you get this bank tab with all of your bank transactions. And it's super simple. You can traditionally press match on the bank transaction. So the Heart and Vascular Clinic have sent some money. I could find the corresponding one on the Intacct side. It's here. All right. Press match and it'll knock it off the bank side and it'll knock it off the Intacct side. And then you just chip away until it's all done. Now, that's a traditional way of doing it. What Intacct again looks to do is alleviate all of this for you as well. So with that, what you can do is implement something called bank rule sets. And they live just over here. And within this, what you do is we can set up some rules that basically say if a transaction comes through on the bank, you can look at this one here, where the amount, the document number, and the date all match. So here you can see that. Then match the two together for us. Okie dokie. Now again, any transactions that flow through, as long as the information is the same on the Intacct side, they'll just match. And what that essentially means, or theoretically means, is by the time you get into your rec at the end of the month, there's nothing for you to do except review what's been matched by the system and hit OK. And then you can reconcile the account quite quickly. So it's a real nice, simple way of setting something up in the system to get it to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Okay. Again, just those little steps, those little extra bits that you don't really think about, but they're there in the background and they are making a huge impact on your month-end processes, on your day-to-day life, things like that. Okie dokie. So that is pretty much it. That's everything I wanted to show you guys. I'll hand back over to Rory. If you guys have any questions, then feel free to ask.
Thank you, Hamza. So we got two questions. So the first one is, does Sage Intacct support the use for business in China and or Hong Kong and work with RMB and Hong Kong dollars?
Yeah, absolutely it does. So you can set up those currencies absolutely fine. We've worked with companies that work in China and Hong Kong before. So over here, you could set up your new transaction currency of RMB. I didn't have it set up, but I can just add it. So here we could find RMB on the list. I think it's actually not RMB in Intacct. I think ISO currency is something else, Chinese dollars or something like that. But you could find it on the list here. And here it is, CNY. So you can add it in into the system, and then you're ready to go. You can utilize that currency in the system. Same for Hong Kong dollars as well. I could add HKD on there, and then it's good to go. There's HKD, and then it's good to go, and you can start transacting in those currencies absolutely fine.
Thanks, Hamza. And then just to extend on that, there was a follow-up question. Can I connect with Chinese and Hong Kong banks?
Yeah, you absolutely can. Again, if you have the specifics, you can feel free to email Rory. I'm sure Rory will touch base after the call and confirm those. But we can connect with any bank in the world. There's really no upper limit. Sage Intacct has it's a native integration with banks. But if that native integration doesn't exist, we can do it via a third party called Access Pay. So it's absolutely fine to do. We can definitely connect them.
Thank you, Hamza. And then another question, please, could you elaborate shortly on the AP module 2?
That might be better suited for a bespoke demonstration. So if you did want to see something specific on the AP module, just touch base with Rory and we can get a bespoke demo set up for you in there.
Yeah.
But theoretically and essentially, it's the same as the AR module, but for accounts payable. So there's no difference to what you've seen on AR.
Yeah, so as Hamza said, we are going to be in touch with you guys, really just to sort of see where you are. I know at the very, very beginning of 2026, so this might be something that is on your immediate radar, something for further out in the year, maybe to coincide with a 2027 go live if your financial year ends at the end of this year. And really the idea then is to have a call with myself to kind of comb through your requirements in more detail with an idea of then having a more tailored demonstration on the areas that are important to you. I think the thing to bear in mind anyway, guys, is it's very much a whistle stop tour of Intacct. We've sort of barely scratched the surface of what it can do, but it's more just to provide an idea of what it looks like and even just from a core financials, what it can do for you. I just want to thank you all for your time. I hope that's been useful for you. And as I said, gives you an insight into what Intacct is, what it looks like. As I say, we'll be in touch. And then next steps will be that if you want to continue this conversation further, we'll have what we call sort of a discovery call, if you like, and it will be with myself. And then, potentially either Hamza or one of his consultants when we have a more tailored sort of demo. Really, the idea there is making sure that Intacct is going to be a good fit for you, and are we a good fit for you from a sort of a partner perspective as well. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. We'll be in touch, and I really hope to speak to some of you in the next week or two. Take care. Bye bye.